Are you struggling to create an intentional headspace, unable to connect deeper with yourself? Come, and together let's address the elephant in the room. I'm your host, Sinead Roche, and this is the Uncomfortable Podcast. Hi guys, and welcome back to another Best Friends episode. I'm your host and your bestie, Sinead Roche. Today is going to be a besties episode. I decided this actually just recently for multiple reasons. I feel like it's been quite some time since we've had one. I mean, it's been like 5 episodes. Around 5 episodes. So I think it's a pretty good time to come back, sit down with me, see what's going on, see what's happening in my life, and maybe this will help you to reflect a bit more what's going on in your life, and also find me a bit more relatable to you and kind of, again, connect a bit more in that sense. Also, I'll be honest, I have had a lot on my plate recently, and I haven't been able to film the latest episode, and so because of that, I kind of just felt like, I do still want to put something out, but at the same time, I feel like maybe today I'm not in the space where I can really get into episode notes that I already have written out, and maybe today is just a good time to just sit and kind of chill with you guys, or chill with myself in that sense. And then lastly, I kind of want to remind myself that this is supposed to be fun for myself, because I've just been feeling recently that there is a lot going on, and so I don't want to get back into the habit I've had in the past where I start to feel like the things I take on voluntarily, and I do voluntarily, even if they are for my future, and I do, want them, I'm working towards goals, I still want to remind myself that this is supposed to be fun, and so I kind of just want to take a bit of a breather, and I hope that's okay with you guys as well. Just share a bit more about myself. So let's get right into it. What's been going on with me recently? Honestly, it's the same thing as before. School, work, studying, more studying, driving school, the podcast, gym. I've been seeing my friends a lot more recently, which has been nice. But if I'm being honest, it's pretty much the same thing all the time, which, to be honest, is also really boring at times. And I think when I was talking about this in the episode on building actual discipline, you do get into these routines where it really is just it's so mundane, and you do the same thing every single day that, I don't know, even when I'm reporting this back to you guys, or even when I'm going through how my day looked, I mean, to be honest, it's mostly very similar to the day before, which is okay because I understand what the goals are. And so in order to kind of spice it up a bit, or what I've done, what my past side quest has been, was I went to this modeling casting, and I thought it was so funny to do it. And I did it with a friend of mine. And I mean, we went there for jokes, but you could tell the people around us, no, they were serious. And I know I look good, or that sounds, no, I know I look good. I was about to say I'm not trying to sound narcissistic. That's not even a selfish thing to say. I do, but I was around models, actual ones, and I was guys, yeah. So, but that was kind of fun to do, and just being in that type of atmosphere and seeing how everything was behind the scenes, it was actually really cool, and something I'd actually do again, just because I think it puts me out there a bit more, maybe not in the sense of actually getting casted, but actually just going into it and feeling confident enough to sit in front of the camera, even though I do that right now, but just in a different sense. So yeah. And also following suit in terms of, what the layout of this episodes are supposed to look like. My biggest takeaway recently, I would say, is that it's not my biggest takeaway, but maybe just a reminder that I have to tell myself is that there are different seasons in life, and in times and phases that you're going to be in. And right now is definitely I'm bored. I'll be honest. Sometimes I'm really bored, and it's not just the boring aspect that gets me sometimes. It's also because I'm moving around so much right now, in terms of physically moving around day to day, but also just moving from country to country, that I feel I'm a bit detached, and that's what I'm going to get into a bit in a second. But I do also know that this is just like a season right now, and so I don't need to like worry so much about it. But that has been something that's kind of, yeah, I just had to remind myself that this is just a season and that this is just for some time and that eventually things will change. Not to say that I'm not happy or content in what I'm doing right now, but like I said, it's a bit monotonous, and so it kind of does get to me. Yeah, in some way. So I've had to, like I said, just remember that things do change, you know, who I was and what I was doing a year ago and how my life looked completely, like, is completely different. And so I know this will pass as well. And so just, I guess, sit with it and be grateful within it. And be like, at least see the positives in it. And that's what I'm really just trying to do as well. And with that said, because I'm kind of feeling really iffy with this season, it is coming with a lot of things that I am struggling with. Mainly, I think the biggest one is just like managing my expectations for myself, and I guess managing the expectations of other people, yeah, but I think it really is managing the expectations that I have for myself in terms of, you know, different obligations that I have or things that I've chosen to do. And so with like, yeah, school has really been hitting me hard, or it's not school, it's uni, but whatever. That's been really hitting me hard. And I guess understanding like who I am as a student, who I am as an intellectual, like oh my gosh, an intellectual person, whatever. That's been something that I've had to manage my expectations on just a bit, because I feel like, and I've talked about this already in lots of episodes, I'm definitely have like a lot of imposter syndrome right now, and even being smart, I feel kind of insecure about that, which I also just mentioned in the last episode, all about learning to cope with insecurities. And so also just managing how I'm viewing myself has been really hard. And then also with the actual tasks that I have to do, I feel like I'm struggling a bit in that sense. But we're gonna have to push through, you know, somehow. We're gonna have to push through somehow. But I have been also like trying to kind of revise my goals when it comes to managing the actual tasks of things. And then I do try to monitor, especially like how I'm speaking to myself, because this is like kind of the fact that I am struggling the way that I am, which is something that I'm not used to anymore. Or I don't know, I've had a lot in the past already, like to do all at once. And so this feels like I'm on a different level right now, which I know. And so I'm really trying to be, again, just kinder to myself, trying to really stop with the thoughts of like, you know, it's not enough or whatever. And just, yeah, give myself more grace in that sense, because it's a new experience. And so obviously I'm not going to be the best at it, like, or 100%, but I'm practicing learning how to really handle everything around me. And so that's what I'm trying to focus on. Yeah. And then other things I've also been struggling with recently, and I think this really does also ties into like why this season for me is a bit shaky or iffy. And I've kind of like hinted at it in the last Best Friends episode, where it's like this thing of I feel kind of like I don't care as much about certain things, or I'm kind of carefree. That's what I said. And I was having a hard time like adjusting to that feeling, and I still am. And like I feel like added onto that, what I've realized is that I'm really detached in this season of my life. I'm detached from the places that I'm even living in, and I'm also detached from just people in general. I feel like in this season I haven't really laid down as many like deep connections and like deep roots, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's maybe exactly what I needed. It just feels so weird compared to how I was before, or who I was in the past. And it's just like a really weird adjustment to have. And what I've been trying to do, because I know it to some degree, it's kind of normal given, you know, what I'm doing, you know, how many things I am doing. Like, it's not like I had to have that much time. And then also with like moving around and things, yeah, it's maybe not necessarily possible for me to feel as deep of a connection as I do in the past or have in the past. And so what I've been trying to do, at least though, is stay really present. You know, maybe the moment does pass and I don't really think about certain things, or like if I'm hanging out with friends and stuff or I'm meeting new people, I just try to at least stay focused on like where I'm at, because oftentimes I have this tendency to be like everywhere else in my mind, or like what I should be doing or where I'm going next, that I'm not really even like there. And I think as someone who's right now experiencing this feeling of just like, I would say detachment, but also kind of just like disconnect, I think it's really important that I try my best to at least be in the moment. And then I know myself, the moment's gonna pass, I'm gonna move on, or at least right now I'm moving on a lot. Like, and so I think at least if I can give myself, you know, the time to stay present, stay within the moment, and then afterwards move on to my next thing, then I don't think this season of detachment or disconnect is as bad as I think it is. I was also talking about this with my therapist actually, and I just feel it's so different from how I usually am. And that's just something I'm kind of wrestling with, like when I sit down and think about it. But again, because I'm moving around so many times, I don't really have that much time, or I don't make that much time to think about this that's kind of impacting me. So yeah, I would say that's something that I've been struggling with. And then recently, actually, this maybe I should mention this like in terms of what's going on. So my program, it's 2 years. The thing is, we're already talking about thesis right now, and I think that's crazy because I remember the last time I just wrote my bachelor's thesis like a year ago. Like, what do you mean we're talking about master's thesis already? And following that kind of like thought process, it's not just thesis that we're talking about, but also like they really want us to do PhDs and continue in academia, or at least just get the PhD. And that kind of comes to the question of like, what is my future going to look like? And I feel like there's such a big pressure to know what you're going to be doing in the future, how it's going to look. And I think in terms of, I don't know, different aspects, but especially like, when it comes to degrees or whatever, like obviously, okay, you got the bachelor's, you got the master's. If they're now talking about getting a PhD, naturally, especially because I've kind of been someone who stayed like the route of like, yeah, education wise, like naturally a PhD would be next. But, and not to say that like I did think about, why am I doing the master's like in general? But I'm really at odds with myself in terms of, doing a PhD, because as much, yes, as that can be considered a risk, I feel like for me, from my perspective, that's kind of like a safety route for me. And I have this big fear, I think a lot of us have this big fear that we might never end up doing what we really wanted to do. We might never end up stepping out of our comfort zone because we didn't want to take the risk, and we might look back and regret it. And what's really been like kind of what I've been drawn to recently in terms of career paths, or like just afterwards, I mean, first of all, money. That sounds really bad, but yeah, being a student for another like 3 years, kind of maybe not necessarily what I would like financially, but it depends always. Like, I haven't really sat down with myself in terms of what I want the future to look like completely. But it's not even, yeah, just being a student, but many different aspects. But what I was going to say anyways about what I'm being drawn to currently is really this creative field. And I'm not just talking about like podcasting, but like, poetry, artists, dancers, like being around like that type of energy, or even like starting like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm even interested again in like startups. but I'm really interested in these like non like, I guess, corporate type of junctions, and I kind of just want to be around that, be around creators in that sense. And I know it's kind of a big risk because what I would want to do in that like area is something that I feel like is definitely not stable or not considered stable. But so I just kind of at odds with a lot of it. And I feel like the more we have these types of conversations within my courses, or my dad loves to joke about the fact that he's like, so what are you going to do after the masters? I just feel like the pressure continues to increase. Like, and personally, what I've just been trying to do, like, in order to not have that kind of build up within me, is, first of all, I take note a lot of the times of like what I like to do or where I'm most passionate. And I do take some time to figure out, okay, how much do I really want to dedicate in terms of like my passion to my career or whatnot. But I do just try to like get data basically on like what I'm finding interesting, or like what I like to do, what I don't like to do and stuff. And I mean, I still have a year to figure. I have more than a year. I really have more than a year. But and not just talking about the masters, but like I have years. Okay, I can do something and then switch. But obviously, like I would like that security. At the same time, I don't want to regret not taking big risks. But because I still kind of have this time with the masters, at least, again, I'm just trying to focus on like what's going on in the present, rather than like, okay, what do I need to make sure is going to happen in the future? And I think in that sense, I'm also, because I'm collecting all kind of this like feedback on myself and like what I enjoy and what I find most promising, because I'm really intentional within being present right now. I think that's going to be more helpful like when I'm looking towards the future, because then I also kind of understand like how and what I've liked to do in the past, and hopefully that will also like help me to kind of figure out what I'm going to be doing in the future. And otherwise, I feel like when those thoughts come up of like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to go on, I mean, I just try to take a deep breath. And this is kind of where I also like my routine, because it kind of stops me from becoming like getting so panicked. Like, and I just, I do what I need to do, and I'm staying within the moment, and everything is just like a step-by-step process. So I know right now I need to focus on the step that I'm in, and the season that I'm in, and focus on what I have to do. And the future is going to come 100%, but if I'm always preparing for the future, then what am I going to prepare for right now? What am I going to be in right now? And so it's another thing of just staying present has been, something that I've been trying to do a bit more lately as well. And because I feel like kind of understand a bit more where I am at least mentally, maybe on more like positive notes, kind of what I'm proud of myself for recently, I think has been generally just, I'm proud of the fact that I'm still struggling. And I say that because that means I haven't given up. Like, struggling for me means that I have not given up. And I mean this in the sense that like of my attitude, because oh my gosh, there's so many days when so many things go wrong, and I love the fact that I am become so flexible in adapting and kind of revising how I'm going to go into the next part of my day. And I don't just see it as like, oh, everything has just gone to shit, or like my week has just like, it's been ruined, the month is over. And so I really appreciate that I have learned that skill, because I know I'm going to need it for the future. And I know, like, I mean, it's showing up like as a really good skill to have even right now. And so I'm just really happy about the fact that, not to say like I'm putting like 100% positive spin, but I'm just seeing other perspectives sometimes, and I'm able to kind of move with them a bit more easily, and that makes my day in general more easy in that sense. So yeah. And in terms of what I'm excited about, I'm going to see my friends from my uni, like around four other persons, so 5 of us. And so I'm really excited to like hang out with them for a weekend. My dad's also doing a High Rocks. He's doing a High Rocks this weekend, and so I'm really proud of him for that. So I'm excited to see that as well. And just, again, yeah, spend a bit more time with persons, which I think is with friends and loved ones, I think is something that I definitely need to do, especially given how I've been feeling with everything else lately. So, yeah, I guess that's really it on my end. I hope this kind of gave you a bit more insight where my head's at. And if you're still questioning kind of like why I do these types of episodes, like beyond just like connection and yeah, definitely like, you know, a bit more like understanding of who I am as a person, like these episodes, as I mentioned, that's really what it's all about. And I think generally it's really hard sometimes when someone, you know, being myself, is giving advice or like going in depth about like certain issues and whatnot, and you don't understand if the person themselves has issues, or like you just don't know what's really going on in their world. And so I kind of just wanted to give you guys a bit more insight into what's happening with me. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. Make sure to tune in every Monday for a new episode on Spotify and YouTube, and go ahead and check out our TikTok and our Instagram for more content. Bye!